We're told this is all, quote, condensation that we see in our skies. We have aircraft leaving trails at altitudes far too low, with far too low humidity, to possibly produce any trail under any circumstances, and yet we see horizon to horizon trails, silvery white skies. Everything we know we would get with geoengineering, we have. You can't turn a condensation trail on and off, even if you ignore all the data. Look up. We see these trails down 20,000 feet, sub 20,000 feet. The conditions necessary for a naturally occurring vapor trail cannot happen at those altitudes. We have film footage of these tankers spraying at altitude, military tankers, KC-10s, KC-135s, C-17 Globemasters. We have up-close photographs of retrofit nozzles mounted on aircraft spraying directly into the exhaust stream to make it look like condensation. And we have the patents for these processes. We have Senate documents, presidential documents, military documents, that these programs have been going on for about 70 years at a large scale. Every single bit of science data, from the type of the engine to the atmospheric conditions to the flight plans, everything makes clear these are not, cannot be condensation trails. From a legal standpoint, the amount of data we have right now is enough to prove beyond any reasonable shadow of a doubt that these programs are real and ongoing. The effort to try to cast doubt on this issue is immense. It's up to the public to start thinking for themselves and doing a little investigation. So many roads lead directly back to climate engineering, and we are nearing critical mass, I would argue. And once we reach that point, there'll be a shockwave around the globe as the entire planet, the entire population realizes they've been irreparably harmed by governments that they thought were there to protect them. That day is coming. What is geoengineering? Geoengineering means climate engineering and climate mitigation. It means to play God with the weather. The primary methods of engineering the climate is to fill the atmosphere with light scattering particulates that are sprayed from the back of jet aircraft. We know many of these particulates are heavy metals. We know that from testing from around the globe and patents as well. With geoengineering, a primary method of solar radiation management. The stated purpose is to block some of the sun's incoming thermal radiation to try to slow down the greenhouse effect that's happening on our planet from the buildup of greenhouse gases. So we have aircraft dispersing light scattering particles all over the globe. It's creating a condition that's termed global dimming. We know that fully 25 to 30% of the sun's direct rays that reached the planet 5 decades ago no longer do. Think about that, 25 to 30%. These particulates, when they settle down to the sea surface, are then utilized for ocean fertilization. To try to force the ocean to absorb yet more CO2 to take it out of the atmosphere, which causes cataclysmic effects in the ocean, but those behind these programs seem to care not for the consequences of what they do. So we have climate engineering to try to block some of the sun's incoming thermal radiation. We have those same materials then settling down to the sea surface, becoming ocean fertilization materials. And all these are causing a catastrophe of downstream consequences that are truly beginning to manifest on our planet. This is an issue that most, when I started this endeavor, were completely unaware of. I have a background in renewable energy with Bechtel Power, which is a very dubious company, like Halliburton, for those who know who Halliburton is. And I left Bechtel at a young age because of things I saw. I've never worked for anybody since. I refused to participate in that sort of company. And when I moved to the Pacific Northwest and built an off-grid home, solar, wind, and hydro, my home was on the cover of the world's largest renewable energy magazine. Shortly after moving in, I was losing massive amounts of my solar power uptake from whatever these aircraft were leaving behind. I mean, I would lose 60, 70, 80% of my solar PV uptake. That's an immense amount, and there's no chance that's from condensation, no chance at all. So I began to research, found a mountain of data on geoengineering, climate engineering, solar radiation management. I researched the primary elements in some of the patents relating to these programs. I began to test my precipitation. I hoped I would not find these materials in my rain, because I certainly knew that I would have to face this issue. I did, from an initial rain test of 7 parts per billion of aluminum, which was high, given my filtered, forested location, away from industry, away from any sort of other contamination. I continued to test over the next 18 months. I had escalations of aluminum in my rain almost 50,000% from that original baseline, up to nearly 3,450 parts per billion. In that 18 months of research, the immensity of the data that was available and the continued escalation of the toxic heavy metals in the precipitation made clear that these programs were real, ongoing, catastrophic, and I simply was faced with the choice to continue on as if it wasn't going on, which I can't do, or to do what needed to be done, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm simply trying to play my part in this, to bring this to light. I could not look my children in the eye without focusing everything I had on these programs. I've been at it ever since, about 14 years now, something in that realm. It all leads back to the money. We can trace all roads back to the central bankers, those who print the money, control militaries, they control countries, they control everything down the ladder. They can print whatever they need for whatever they want. It's above governments, above elected officials, and all the people involved, from academia to the military, who are being told they're engaged in some planetary saving endeavor. That's a complete lie. And it's up to those people to start investigating what they're doing and what it's doing to the planet. And that's a complex answer to that question. Too many people try to put it in one box to make it a this or that answer. It's this and that and many other things. You have stated on Senate documents the stated goal of the U.S. government and multiple agencies in the U.S. government. In these documents, they state their goal of deciding where it rained too much, where it didn't rain enough, as if it's their choice to decide. As you interfere with the climate system, you do damage. And there are many other sources of anthropogenic damage as well. As that damage has mounted and manifested, now you have a great portion of geoengineering is the attempt to hide the damage already done from the population as long as possible, while inflicting yet more damage in the process. We have weather warfare. We have the stated goal of not just the U.S. military, but others around the globe to, quote, own the weather for military purposes, owning the weather as a, quote, force multiplier. Why would they not want to control the weather when they can win a war without firing a shot, when they can win a war without another country even knowing they went to war? Geoengineering is the pharmaceutical cure for planet Earth. The military-industrial complex, keep business as usual as long as possible, hide it from the population as long as possible, use it as a weapon as long as possible. They're not about to let go. There are many layers to the why question, and people need to not try to put it in one box. But I want to state this: there is no benevolence in these programs. And anything we post, we can prove, we can back it up. Geoengineeringwatch.org is a data repository. We're non-political. We simply want to have the most credible site possible for people to draw upon to help wake others up. The site was started in 2009, and we are now experiencing about 20,000 to 25,000 visitors a day. What I have tried to do at geoengineeringwatch.org and tried to encourage other very committed activists to do is to utilize the science terms when trying to convey this issue to others, so that when people search this issue online, when they look for data, they find solid, credible science data and not conspiracy theory and hoax. Thus, semantics matter. If we use the science terms, climate engineering, geoengineering, solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection, if we know and use the science terms, people will search and find science data. When people use the term chemtrails, which many people are bent on using that term, certainly it's a descriptive term, but it is a non-science term that by design leads people to definitions of conspiracy theory and hoax, and that's as far as most people get. What I've tried to do, and with the help of other activists that also see the merit in taking that science approach, is to gain credibility, and credibility that's necessary to build bridges with those from the climate science community who know this is going on, but are afraid to speak out and certainly afraid to associate with any other groups or movements that are not standing on solid science. Absolutely, there's absolutely proof. To start with, I would ask people to use their sense of reason, use their own power of observation, to look up, to simply look up. How come we can have a grid pattern in our skies one day and nothing the next? Why do we have massive trails in our skies during the daytime, and most cases at night, 10, 11, 12 at night, you can see aircraft leaving nothing in the sky? Even if you ignore all the data, look up and ask yourself how you could possibly turn a condensation trail on and off. How you could possibly, if atmospheric conditions were creating this, how could you possibly have a trail from horizon to horizon next to an aircraft leaving virtually nothing? We see these trails down 20,000 feet, sub 20,000 feet. The conditions necessary for a naturally occurring vapor trail cannot happen at those altitudes in the temperature range we see it happening in. We can't have that kind of condensation, especially behind a high bypass turbofan jet engine, especially at the altitudes we're at. We have tutorials on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org with animations to show what this fan is about. That's the engine that's fitted on all commercial tankers and all military aircraft. That's a jet-powered fan. By design, it's nearly incapable of producing any condensation trail, except under the most extreme circumstances. 85% of the air that passes through it is non-combusted. Many have argued that we have an increase in jet air traffic, so we should see more trails. But what we're seeing are these trails in locations where there is no commercial traffic. We had a FAA flight GPS tracking done at the request of a congressional rep that showed massive loops taking place over the whole Pacific West Coast of these aircraft spraying. And at the altitudes we see them at now, we see these trails down 20,000 feet, sub 20,000 feet. In every place we would expect to see this fallout, we see it. It's bioavailable. These particulates are so small, they're absorbed in everything from plant life. They enter straight through our lung lining into our bloodstream where they adhere to cell receptors like a plaque. The snow off the side of Mount Shasta, thought to be a pristine water source. Snow samples off the side of Mount Shasta, as tested at the state certified lab by a former Forest Service biologist, showed 61,000 parts per billion of aluminum. Highly toxic snow. Many times more aluminum in the snow than in the soil beneath the snow. We have precipitation tests, snow tests. Every human test subject we test, hair, blood, or urine, has off-the-chart levels of aluminum and barium and strontium, metals named in climate engineering patents, in their system. Patents like stratospheric Welsbach seeding for reduction of global warming, assigned to Hughes Aircraft in 1991. We have patents for other forms of artificial cloud formation. The list is so immensely long and complicated, we simply encourage people to look at it. We have the entire list posted. And individuals who don't want to face this issue try to claim that because aluminum is so abundant in the environment, 8% of the Earth's strata, we should see it everywhere, and that's a blatant lie. Aluminum does not exist in the environment in free form naturally. Aluminum can't exist in that state unless it's been mined and refined and sprayed, period. And now it is showing up in free form everywhere. And on top of all this, congressional documents, presidential documents, military documents, patents. How much proof do we need? Historical fact, weather warfare going on around the globe, Project Popeye, Project Storm Fury. We have mountains of facts to prove beyond any reasonable doubt these programs are absolutely real and ongoing, causing cataclysmic damage to the planet and our health. From a legal standpoint, the amount of data we have right now is enough to prove beyond any reasonable shadow of a doubt that these programs are real and ongoing. Legal suit has already been filed in Canada. Legal suit is pending and close to being filed in the US. And with that filing, our attorneys will prove that this heavy metal contamination is real, it exists, agencies have not disclosed it to the public, and the public has a right to know. Does the government have a right to conduct these programs over populations? If we move back to a UN treaty in 1976 that was passed forbidding weather manipulation during wartime. In that treaty, a country's own right to experiment on their own populations was not forbidden. So we have loopholes in the system, especially in regard to national security, where countries are not forbidden to conduct such programs over their own populations. The US military leaders have stated on the record, the greatest and most immediate threat to U.S. national security is the disintegrating climate. Do we really believe that these people in the military-industrial complex are going to ask our permission to intervene with the climate? In the course of our legal proceedings on the climate engineering issue, do our attorneys expect the national security card to be played as this issue begins to come to light? Yes, they do. But is that not an admission that these programs are going on? It is. This is a primary question that so many people use to fortify their denial and walk away from this issue. How many things have they done to themselves already that we already know about? How about detonating over 2,000 nuclear weapons around the globe? The initiation of which they did not know the consequences of, but they did it anyway. Every life form on the planet is contaminated with the fallout from those 2,000 nuclear bomb detonations. Don't they know they work after several dozen? But they kept doing it. Let's look at Fukushima. We have now 3 reactors in full meltdown. No end in sight to that situation, no known technology to fix it, and yet we're building 60 more nuke plants right now. In the case of climate engineering, again, it's a very complex issue. It's not a deliberate attempt necessarily at ecocide, genocide, or omnicide, but it does add up to that. The planet has been irreparably damaged now, and those in power simply look at this as a risk-to-risk scenario, the risk of doing it versus the risk of not doing it. We're already geoengineering the planet. Human activity is a form of geoengineering, period. When you alter the natural life form or life-sustaining systems of the planet, you're geoengineering the planet. So from their perspective, they feel compelled to try to engineer the planet, to compensate for the damage already done. There's many people making profit at this. Disaster capitalists, too many people invested to turn back. So in order to keep business as usual, they have chosen for us, without our knowledge or consent, to engineer the planet, going back 70 years, doing immensely more damage than what was already done. How many examples do we need of the suicidal behavior of those in power? And we have a population that simply wants to look the other way, wants to go about their personal pursuit of pleasure, and doesn't want to do their part. You can't find what you're not looking for. People ask if this much material was coming down on us, contaminating our air quality. Why wouldn't we hear about it? Why wouldn't EPA and air quality testing notify us of this issue? Because their equipment, by design, cannot detect this material. Air quality testing equipment is generally PM10, which is 10 microns, or at best PM2.5, 2.5 microns. We're talking about nanoparticulates. As named on the patents, we've done tests of precipitation and looked for particles as small as 0.01 microns, still could not identify a single particle. They're much smaller than that. So we're talking about particles that are hundreds and thousands of times smaller than anything the air quality tests for. That's why a mountain of material goes completely unreported. To try to put in perspective in regard to how small these nanoparticulates are compared to the size of particle that normal air quality testing tests for, let's compare a boulder to a grain of sand. That's the difference. And that's why these particles can't be detected. That's why they're so dangerous. That's why they're being absorbed into everything. You can fit as many as 50,000 nanoparticulates across the width of a human hair. How do you get your arms around that? I was told by a California state water quality rep in about 2004 that the state stopped testing for aluminum in the water in 2002. Why is that? I was on the phone with another rep from California State Water Quality after they received tests from other sources proving aluminum was flowing through the tributaries in California. And this rep with State Water Quality made it clear that under no circumstances did the state care what's in the precipitation, nor would they ever test precipitation. Where do they think runoff comes from? I've spoken in front of CARB, California Air Resources Board, and they stated publicly at that meeting that climate engineering was of no concern to them. It's not in their jurisdiction. I've been in high-level EPA meetings in Sacramento, one arranged by a congressional rep, 5 top EPA people in that meeting, and told to my face that the system is rigged, that they are, in the case of air particulates, for example, they're told what to test for, mandated, and the rest of the test goes out the window. They're told to test for combustion particulates only, and the rest of the sample is not even examined. From every direction, these agencies that the public assumes would tell them if something was wrong are doing exactly the opposite. People need to understand this. If we're going to preserve a future for our children, it's up to us. Anybody that's in a position to know firsthand this is going on and speaks out about it, they can expect unimaginable repercussions. We do have a pilot, in fact, that is speaking out about this issue on the record. We have a number of pilots that have. I'm dealing right now with a federal District 6 EPA employee that tried to bring to light aluminum contamination that he believes is directly from geoengineering in the water, the fallout. And he is being pulled through the coals right now. If they're a government scientist, no First Amendment protection, and in the case of National Weather Service and NOAA employees, federal gag order. So we need to have a population that supports these academicians, that gives them the cover they need to come out of the shadows and start telling the truth. We are required to be good stewards of our planet, period. It's not an option, it's an obligation. I'm sad to say that most seem more concerned about protecting their 501c3s, their nonprofits. They do not want to address this issue. In the case of many spiritual institutions, and I'm not focusing on any particular one because they're all behaving in the same manner, they are choosing to tell their congregations that everything is in bigger hands. We don't need to worry about this. And I would challenge any of those institutions to show me or their congregation where in their doctrine it states that you are allowed to sit and do nothing when you see this kind of atrocity happening. We are not allowed to turn two blind eyes to such atrocities. We are required to be good stewards of our planet, period. It's not an option, it's an obligation. In the case of environmental groups who are behaving with unimaginable hypocrisy, who are ignoring the single greatest environmental assault of all, and I'm talking about Greenpeace, Sierra Club, NRDC, Environmental Defense, all of them. Our attorneys have spoken to attorneys from, for example, Environmental Defense and Sierra Club. I've personally spoken to Sierra Club top members in Northern California. They don't want to hear it, they don't want to see it. So it's up to us. It all comes back to us. We are the ones we've been waiting for. simply something that most people are afraid of doing. You can speak confidentially with an attorney or even a team of our attorneys off the record so that they can help decide how to best handle the information that you have. The full list of downstream consequences from climate engineering is so immense, it's truly impossible to quantify. The most detrimental factors that are inarguable, proven by science study, geoengineering completely disrupts the hydrological cycle. As you fill the atmosphere with particulates, you have too many condensation nuclei, and it tends to migrate rain from one place to another. It diminishes direct light. We have global dimming as a result of solar radiation management. That's the express goal, to block the sun. That decreases evaporation. The same particulates decrease convection. The most detrimental factors that are inarguable, proven by science study. You have a shredded ozone layer that's causing massive UV radiation. We're seeing UVB levels 10 times higher than we're being told. We're metering UV radiation, so we know, we're not guessing. So you have levels of UV radiation, you have UVA at the top, UVB, UVC, and then X-ray. We're told that no more than 5% of all incoming UV radiation should be UVB. We're seeing 55% to 60%, 10 to 11 to 12 times higher than we're being told. It's burning the bark off of trees. It's killing plankton. Plankton supplies over half of Earth's oxygen content. We've seen global plankton populations plummet 50 to 60%. That's the bottom of the food chain, the bottom of life on Earth. And also, this is important to consider, on a warming planet, we should have an increase in atmospheric RH, atmospheric relative humidity. Laws of physics say we must. Since the mid-40s, when we know these programs started, we see a decrease in atmospheric relative humidity. Because these particles are desiccant materials. They absorb and accrete all available moisture. That's why they show up when they're sprayed. That's why atmospheric humidity is going down, not up. We have the bioavailable metals that are in the rain, which radically affect the root systems, and we know from peer-reviewed study, in the case of aluminum, when trees like conifers and boreal forests sense the aluminum, they shut down nutrient uptake. They die. We have forests now that are not only not producing oxygen, they're not feeding on carbon, they're not absorbing, they've become carbon sources instead of carbon sinks. The same particulates decrease convection. The data indicates that the ozone damage is not so much a result of CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, but of climate engineering. And the CFCs have been used as a red herring. We have an exponential increase in forest fires around the globe. Siberia is losing about 100 million acres of forest to fires every year. We lost 600% more forest to fires in Canada last year. These are astronomically high numbers. As climate engineering, again, how does it fuel forest fires? Again, less rain. We have an intense ozone destruction that's causing massive UV radiation, which has a very detrimental effect to the trees. We have more dry lightning. We have an incendiary dust coating the foliage. These metal particulates are incendiaries, so they coat the foliage. The aluminum showing up everywhere. In whales, we have a study of 1,000 whales from the most remote places on the planet, and the study stated clearly, and I'm quoting directly from the study, jaw-dropping levels of aluminum in their tissues. There is no place to hide from what's falling out. the bees are dying around the globe. Myself, I've communicated with some of the head bee people around the country for many years, tried to plead with them to investigate this issue, that there was a much bigger factor with the bees than glyphosate. And that issue was heavy metals, i.e. aluminum. We now have peer-reviewed study that proves the bees are dying of aluminum, that bees are exhibiting symptoms of Alzheimer's and dementia because they have, in many cases, 70 times more aluminum in them than it takes to cause Alzheimer's or dementia in a human being. It's a wonder any of the bees are alive at all. We're seeing an uptake in all plant life. There is no organic anything at this point, nothing. All plant life is uptaking these materials. According to Norwegian researchers that we've worked with and communicated with, they're seeing horizontal gene mutation in all plant life. Word is traveling rapidly. People understand that something is very, very wrong in our skies with the climate, with the dying off of the trees, wildlife, frogs, fish, bats, birds. We're looking at biosphere implosion right now. We're swimming in a toxic sea at this point. What's happening inside us? These particles are endocrine disruptors. So the list of effects on the human body is immense, many of which are unknown. When we have an atmosphere, a breathable air column that's laden with toxic, heavy metal nanoparticulates, and these particulates are so small that according to internationally recognized neuroscientists like Dr. Russell Blaylock, who's spoken on the record, these particles enter straight through the lung lining, go straight into the bloodstream, adhere to cell receptors, cross the blood-brain barrier, do an unimaginable amount of damage to our system. It's not only bioavailable, it's bioaccumulative. It builds up in our system. It goes in, it doesn't come out. The bottom line is all of us are getting sicker by the day. We're firing on less neurons by the day. We're thinking less cognitively. 1 out of 3 seniors in the US now dies with Alzheimer's and or dementia. 1 out of 3 not dies from it, but dies with it. In the case of autism, also, peer-reviewed study proves connected to aluminum exposure. We have autism going from 1 in 5,000 in 1975 to 1 in 47 in 2014, and now we have internationally recognized institutions like MIT stating on the record that in less than 9 years we will have every other child with autism. Every other child. How many red flags does it take? The list of effects on the human body is immense, many of which are unknown. But what is known is bad enough. We face a fight for life. If every breath we take is laden with these particles, and the lab tests prove that they are, this is not theory, not conjecture, not speculation. Every breath we take is laden with these materials. We have a fight for life. It's time we face it accordingly. The most critical question of all, what do we do about it? How do we deal with this situation? We must reach a critical mass of awareness. And people ask, what then? What happens then? The effort to reach a critical mass of awareness is how we've gotten this far. That's how we've acquired the attorneys that we have that are fighting for us right now. That's how we've had, for example, military personnel that have contacted me directly. I'm communicating with the former Air Force general, former Army Major General, people from other arenas that are reaching out to us right now. That's how that happens, by providing enough cover for those people to come out of the shadows and join us in our fight. When we reach critical mass, that's when the families of those involved understand what's happening and what their family members are participating in, and we can stop these programs from the inside out. That's the only way we can stop them. We can't go up against the US military. We have to stop these programs from the inside out by appealing to our military brothers and sisters. We must have them on our side or we have no chance. What does the common man do, or the common woman, to help in this battle? You start spot fires of awareness everywhere around you, and you do that with credible data. You keep flyers, credible informational flyers with you, which are much more effective than pointing at the sky and ranting. That only makes people shut down. You can download flyers from geoengineeringwatch.org for free and print them locally. color, glossy, two-sided flyers that are very effective. You can hold viewings in your home and invite people to see the data so they can decide for themselves. You can contact agencies, individuals, organizations, ag groups, Alzheimer's groups, ADD groups. The list is endless. Send them credible data. And we have on geoengineeringwatch.org what's called a flaming arrow package. The purpose behind that is to start a spot fire of awareness, shoot a flaming arrow of information. That's a fully prepared introduction letter to this issue that's done in a manner that's palatable for people who are new to the issue with informational links. It's all prepared. All you have to do is send it out to the right people. If you or any other individual credibly passes data on to 2 people at the beginning of a 30-day month, and those 2 to 2 each the second day, and so on, for 30 days, that's 5.5 million at the end of 30 days. The equation goes exponential, unimaginably fast, if you simply take those steps. Once we reach critical mass, and every human being on this planet understands the severity of the situation, the immediacy of it, and the fact that their planet on which they and their children depend and their own health has been permanently and irreparably damaged, then that's when the paradigm changes. Help us to bring this issue to light while we yet have time. If we can bring it to light, we can bring it to a halt. Do your part. Geoengineering is an all-out assault against the web of life. If we continue on this course, your paychecks and pensions won't matter. Ask yourself why you're here. Ask yourself what you owe to your children. Let's walk the walk. All of us are needed in this battle. Make your voice heard. Help us to reach a critical mass of awareness. Help us to bring this issue to light. And if we can, even at this late hour, we could take a quantum leap in the right direction.